What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
In a brothel at Morlana 1, Cassian Andor, assumed to be the last survivor from Canari, asks around for his sister, but is told she left some months ago. On his way out of the planet, he's ambushed by crooked cops who intend to harass and extort him from money. However, things don't go as planned for Andor, and he kills them to escape. Upon his return to Ferrix, a free trade zone, Cassian begins to arrange his escape. To raise money for his departure, he gets Bix, his ex-girlfriend, to contact a buyer for one of the high-grade parts he'd pawned off an Imperial site. Back at Morlana 1, the corporate security headquarters has gotten word of the cop's murder. Deputy Inspector Cyril leads the investigation, despite his inspector's instruction to sweep it under the carpet. In a flashback to Cassian's past, he, his sister, and a select group from their village in Canari journey into the forest, curious about the crash that had happened there. Info about Prey More Authority's hunt for a Canari male reaches Ferrix, causing Cassian to amplify his efforts to leave the planet. Bix reaches out to Cassian and informs him that the buyer for the ship part has agreed to come in the following day. Meanwhile, back at Morlana 1, Cyril and his team of hardworking cops have been able to put a face to their murder suspect. It's not an accurate depiction of Cassian, but it's enough to nail him. Their efforts are rewarded with success when Tim, Bix's boyfriend, driven by jealousy, feeds them info on Cassian's whereabouts. So, they gear up and make for Ferrix immediately. Back to Cassian's past, the Canari villagers reach the crash site and find a destroyed ship along with the corpses of some men. As they investigate the scene, one of the men gains consciousness and shoots the leader. And although the rest of the group fights back immediately, they cannot save her. Curious, a little Cassian returns to the crash site and enters the ship. There, he meets his future adoptive parents, Marva and Clem, who drug him and take him off the planet to save him from the onslaught of his people at the hands of the Empire. In the present, the cops have arrived at Ferrix and make their way to Cassian's house. The cops get a ping on Cassian's location when he patches a message through his droid, B2. They track him to the building, where he discusses the ship part he intends to sell to Luthan, the buyer. Luthan, however, is here for Cassian's skill and is able to convince him to come on board his plan to rob an Imperial garrison in return for a big payday. Becoming aware that they are surrounded, the two fight together through the Praymore cops and leave Ferrix in Luthan's ship. Meanwhile, Bix watches Tim die as he tries to save her from being wrongfully arrested by a squad of Praymore cops. Luthan explains Cassian's role in the mission on their way to Aldhani. Upon arrival, Luthan hands Cassian over to Vel, the leader of a ragtag group of rebels, while he goes to Coruscant, where he fronts as a pawnbroker. Meanwhile, the Praymore Corporation has been dissolved, and its top officials, Cyril included, dismissed for the incident at Ferrix. Afterward, the Imperial Security Bureau take over Morlana 1 and Ferrix. At Aldhani, Cassian reaches the rebel camp and is introduced to the rest of the team: Cinta, Nemik, Scheme, and Terramin, and Lieutenant Gom, their inside man. Although his coming is considered inconvenient, he quickly familiarizes himself with the plan and proves with his fighter mentality and piloting skills why he's an essential part of their mission, and gives himself the codename Clem for the upcoming mission. At Coruscant, the capital world of the Empire, Senator Mon Mothma visits Luthan, and it's revealed that she handles the funding for the rebellion. She informs Luthan about her problem moving money because she's being closely monitored. When Luthan insists on the importance of her money, she decides to seek help from a friend to transfer the money without a trace. Cyril returns home to a mother who's not excited by his recent downfall. However, she starts trying to put him on track almost immediately. After adept preparations, Clem and the rest of the team set out for the garrison on the D-Day. However, Skeen, who's been suspicious of him, forces him to tell everyone he was hired. Vel gets the group to keep their emotions down and focus on the mission. Then, Vel and Cinta withdraw from the group to execute their part of the plan, while the rest of the guys march toward the garrison. Meanwhile, Luthan's nervous about the heist, while Mon Mothma's husband reveals his suspicion about his wife's numerous charity projects. Cassian, Skeen, Terramin, and Nemik infiltrate the garrison with the aid of Lieutenant Gorn, while Cinta and Vel block the comms in the garrison, leaving the Aldhani channel open for themselves. Inside, they keep the Commandant and his family hostage and use them as leverage to get the credits intended for the Empire's payroll onto the ship. Things get complicated quickly when one of the soldiers stumbles upon the Aldhani channel and catches up with the ongoing theft. A shootout ensues, leaving Terramin and Gom dead and wounding Nemik, whose calibrations lead them safely out of the garrison, exploiting a cosmic event called the Eye. While they wait for Nemik to get treated by a doctor, Skeen tries to convince Cassian to double-cross Vel and Luthan and split the money among themselves. In retaliation, Cassian kills him, hands Luthan's down payment to Vel, and leaves with his cut of the money, but not before getting Nemik's manifesto, which was his dying wish for Cassian. In retaliation for the attack on the garrison, the Empire cracks down hard on the people by implementing impossible rules and policies. Mon Mothma, an ardent speaker in the Senate against the Empire's harsh policies, goes to see Luthan and confronts him about his reckless action at Aldhani. However, Luthan lets her know that the Empire's reaction is all according to plan, since he wants them to react harshly and slowly spark a rebellion by the people. After that, Mon Mothma asks an old friend and banker, Tay, for help raising some money. Meanwhile, Clea, Luthan's assistant, meets up with Vel covertly and asks her to kill Cassian, as his non-commitment to the cause makes him a loose end. Straight from the events of Aldhani, Cassian lands in Ferrix and tries to convince his mother to leave with him, but she turns his offer down. Unable to hang around any longer, Cassian leaves for Neamos, with the promise to return. There, he assumes the name Keef Gurgo, but trouble doesn't lie too far behind as he gets arrested randomly and wrongfully, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Cassian is sent to Narkina 5, an Imperial facility surrounded by water, along with other prisoners. There, survival depends on productivity and adherence to stringent rules. Cassian is introduced to his team, and they get to work. In the world outside, Deidre, a supervisor with the ISB, has all the while been investigating numerous incidents throughout the galaxy, including the ones on Ferrix and Aldhani, and believes all of them to be connected to a coordinated effort by the rebels. To find out more, she draws Cyril in for questioning. Using his testimony, Deidre connects the dots and identifies an individual, who she codenames Axis, that's central to all the subtle attacks that have been going on randomly, and also believes him to be the mind behind the Aldhani incident, with, of course, Axis being Luthan. With Ferrix no longer a free trade zone, all eyes are out for Cassian, including the forces of the Empire on the grounds and rebels, Vel and Sintra. When Marva starts unraveling, Bix throws caution to the wind and tries to contact Luthan in the hopes of learning of Cassian's whereabouts. However, Bix is arrested because the ISB caught on her attempt to reach out to Luthan. Dedra has her tortured and is able to procure some information about Cassian, but not too much about Luthan. Since she's the only one with a clear link to Axis, Dedra keeps her incarcerated. At Coruscant, Mon Mothma, on her way home from a Senate meeting, is informed of her cousin's visit. On getting home, her cousin is revealed to be none other than Vel. Meanwhile, at an ISB meeting, Dedra supplies the Council with information linking the Ferrix incident with the Aldhanis. Using the ship parts stolen from the various Imperial forces, she's able to establish a lead. At Narkina 5, Cassian and Kino, another inmate, discover that about 100 men were killed to hide the fact that no one ever gets out of the prison. Those who looked like they were are only being transferred to another section. After this discovery, Cassian informs Kino that they need to escape the following day, using the arrival of a prisoner as an avenue to spring themselves out. They inform the rest of the cellmates and start working on a plan. Back at Coruscant, Tay arranges a meeting for Mon Mothma with Davo, a wealthy man who can loan her some money for her project due to the restrictions on her family's wealth. He comes through, but on a request that she allows a meetup between her daughter and his son. Meanwhile, Cassian and his team put their plan in motion, successfully take over the prison and escape. At Coruscant, Luthan meets with Lonnie Jung, an ISB supervisor who works as a mole for him. Lonnie informs him of Dedra's investigation and tells him she knows about Anto Kriegers, who is another rebel leader. Intended attack on the Empire. However, Luthan refuses to act, as any action would let the ISB realize he has a mole among them. While Cassian struggles to make his way home, he's unaware that Marva has died due to her failing health. When the news of her death reaches the ISB, Dedra decides to use the funeral to draw Cassian in and capture him. There's no one to warn Cassian about the ISB's plans, and although he's careful about contacting his friends, he's not too careful. He reaches out to Zanwan, who informs him of his mother's death. With news of Marva's death already gone public, Luthan, Cinta, and Vel also learn of it and wait for Cassian on Ferrix. Meanwhile, Syrah, despite his new job, has become obsessed with Cassian's case, learns about Marva's death and Cassian's potential return, and goes over to Ferrix as well. At Neomos, Cassian and Melshi, one of the surviving inmates, decide to split up and spread the word about what they have just experienced in one of the Empire's prisons. Afterward, Cassian heads home. On the day of Marva's funeral, everyone intending to capture Cassian is at Ferrix, and they're vigilant as they prepare to apprehend him. Zanwan tells Brasa that Cassian called and that he told him about Marva's death. Having arrived the night before, Cassian goes in search of Bix and discovers that she's been taken hostage by the ISB and remanded in the hotel. After meeting with Brasso the following day, Cassian goes after Bix, intending to rescue her. Although the ISB, Luthan, and Vel and Sintra aren't aware of Cassian's presence in Ferrix yet, they're keeping tight surveillance on his buddies and waiting for cues that may alert them to his whereabouts. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma finally agrees to Davo's proposal and orchestrates a meeting between her daughter and his son. When the funeral begins, B2 assumes center stage and plays a holographic message from Marva. She informs the people of how low they've fallen and encourages them to fight against the Empire's oppression. The funeral quickly turns into a fight when the ISB's commanding officer flips B2 over. While the fight rages on, Cassian successfully infiltrates the hotel and rescues Bix. Outside, Dedra is overpowered by the angry crowd and almost gets torn apart, but Cyril steps in at the last moment and saves her. Cassian, Bix, Brasso, and B2 and two others escape to a ship heading out of the planet. However, Cassian doesn't leave with them. Instead, he goes to Luthan's ship and signs up for the rebellion. Sometime later, it is revealed that the prisoners were actually building parts for the Death Star, which is being assembled by countless droids in outer space.
Kill me. Or take me in.